Welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have a great dessert recipe for you. This week it is Snickerdoodles, just in time for Thanksgiving in the States. And this is a classic cookie. It's a little bit different from your average. It's got a little bit of sourness because there's cream of tartar or tartaric acid in there. And we'll get going and show you our ingredients. So we're starting off with butter, lots of butter, some plain flour. This is all-purpose flour, some sugar, a little bit of vanilla, some eggs. We've also got some baking powder, some tartaric acid or cream of tartar, and a little bit of salt. We're also going to be reserving some of the sugar and some cinnamon to roll them in at the end. So that's going to be the last step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cream the butter and the sugar together, and we're going to add our salt to this as well. Now, we don't have to worry about live leavening in this. There's not any yeast or anything. So the salt you can add at any period, any time of your recipe. You don't have to worry about it stopping the leavening at all. But we are going to add the leavening a little bit later, so we'll get to that. So first things first, let's just get that butter and sugar cream together. And we want it to be nice and smooth. While that's going, we're going to mix our dry ingredients. So the tartaric acid, the baking powder, and the flour all together, and then just give that a good stir until it's well combined. So you can do this with a whisk. You can also sift it together if you'd prefer. We're just going to give it a stir with a fork. Just keep an eye on it. Make sure there's no clumps of anything in there. And once it's well combined, it's ready to go. So we're just going to give that a nice good stir to make sure it's well combined. And once that's ready to go, we're going to go back to our mixer. Just going to double check on our butter and sugar. And you can see here it's all been nicely creamed together. So once it's at this stage, we're going to start adding the eggs one at a time until they have completely been mixed in. Now, you do want to stop and make sure you are getting down to the bottom and scraping the bottom of your bowl, because sometimes in these mixing bowls, you'll get a little chunk at the bottom that is not mixed in properly. So you do want to make sure you're stirring everything up to get every last bit in there. And this is going to be especially important after we've added the flour. You don't want any lumps of flour that have not been mixed in. So there we go. We gave that a little stir just to make sure that everything's up from the bottom. Now we're going to add our other egg. And then once again, we're just going to stir that in until it is well combined and the egg has been completely incorporated into our cookie batter. So there we go. Once that is completely added in, again, we just want to scrape everything down. We're going to make sure that everything is been mixed up from the bottom and there's no lumps of anything or unmixed areas. Now, the texture doesn't look really great right now. This is just sugar, butter, and eggs. It does have kind of a like a curdled look to it, but don't worry. We're going to be adding the flour shortly. Everything's going to be just fine. Now, we like to add all of the flour at once. If you are worried about a big puff of flour showing up from your mixer, then you can add it in stages. But we just add it all at once. And the trick is to give it a little bit of a pulse instead of starting it right away. Now, we also forgot to add our vanilla to our soft ingredients. So if you do have a little exposed bit of your wet ingredients down there, then just add the vanilla down into that. Don't dump it right into the flour because it'll sort of make it harder to mix everything together. But if you do have a little bit, of your wet ingredients still showing, just mix it in there. So we're just going to pulse this slowly and gently. We want to make it go pretty slow because we want to make sure we're not going to get that big cloud of flour puffing up out of our mixer bowl here. So just keep giving it a good pulse and mixing it like that. Then once it gets to this stage, you can just finish it off once there's no exposed flour. Now you do want, once again, to stir everything up. Make sure there's no lumps of flour at the bottom. Make sure there's no clumps or anything that haven't been stirred up. So make sure you're getting all the way down to the bottom of your bowl when you're stirring this in. So there we go. We've got everything stirred up from the bottom. You usually only have to do this once during this process, and then once you've got everything in the bowl together and there's nothing that hasn't been mixed up from the bottom, you can just finish getting everything well combined until it is a good smooth cookie dough. And that's about it. Honestly, you don't want to go too far. You really don't want to overmix, or else your cookies come out a little less tender. You get too much gluten production, and it's just not, the texture is not as nice in your cookies. You want some nice tender cookies. You want them to be nice and fluffy on the inside. So don't overmix. It's really important to not take it too far, just to this stage. Next thing we're going to do is actually put this in the fridge. We're going to let that rest for a little while, so we're going to pack that in some plastic wrap. Here it is fresh out of the fridge. We're just going to let it chill for half an hour, 45 minutes until it's nice and chilled through. And then it's ready to work with. So we're going to put on some gloves for this because it is a little sticky to do this part of the process. We're going to mix the cinnamon and sugar together. And again, this is just for coating the outside. So whatever concentration of cinnamon you like, you can go ahead with, and we like it pretty cinnamony. And then we're just going to grab some small balls of this and roll it into a ball and put that in our cinnamon sugar mixture until it's well coated. Now the dough is fairly sticky, so it will hold that cinnamon sugar very, very well. And we're just going to put those onto a parchment-lined baking sheet as we finish them. So ideally, 4 at a time kind of works the best because they kind of roll off of each other. You have to do less work this way. They really take care of themselves, and then just take them off and put them on that baking sheet. We had a much too large baking sheet for this that only took up a small amount of it. And then you can actually freeze these. They freeze very, very well. We took 6 of them and cooked them right away because we were really wanted to try them, of course. But they freeze very, very well. So just pack those into a big gallon-sized Ziploc bag and pop them in the freezer. And whenever you want some, you can take them out. They just take a slightly longer cooking time if you're cooking them from frozen instead of from fresh. So we cook these for a while. Turn them. Unless you have a convection oven, you should turn them about halfway through. And then when they're done, they look like this. You see these nice cracks on the top, the outside nice and crispy. They won't get super, super dark or anything like that. The sugar is going to just caramelize a little on the outside. But they look and they taste amazing. So they've got that really nice cinnamon sugar aroma. They're nice and fluffy on the inside and crispy on the outside. Nice and tender, and that's it. That's the whole thing. Super, super easy. Really delicious cookie. They're fantastic. If you have holiday cookie exchanges coming up at work, this is a fantastic recipe for that. And we hope you'll enjoy. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.